Testing, 1, 2, 3. Get this thing.
You have to touch it to the right.
The other right?
The right.
There we go. Hi, everybody. We're just waiting for quorum here. We understand Councillor DeRouge is on his way, and Councillor Manette is supposed to be in the building, so just give us a couple extra minutes and we'll start. Okay, Councillor DeRouge has joined us, so we have quorum and we can get started. Welcome, everybody, to the meeting of the Audit Committee, the October 8th, 2015 meeting. Let's see, Councillor Wilkinson and El Shantiri had notified us that they are unable to attend. They're away today. Councillor Manette, we understand, is coming, so but we can start now. We have our quorum. Is there any declaration of interest by anybody on committee? No, we're good. Okay, can we have confirmation on the minutes from the June 15, 2015 meeting? Carried. Okay, thank you. And our first item up will be the Office of the Auditor General, the report on the audit follow-ups. And Mr. Hughes, I don't know if you want to start by introducing your new colleagues here, or get...
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur le Président et les membres du committee. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'd like to begin by introducing the staff of my office. On my left is my assistant, Lise Renault, and on my right are the two Deputy Auditors General, Sonia Brennan and Ed Miner. And sitting up behind us are two senior auditors, Suzanne Beltran and Louise Prue, two auditors, Alina Kime and Janet Onyango, who's we're lucky to have. She's filling in for Margaret Sue, who is at home taking on her new duties as a new mother. Slide 4. Monsieur le Président, est-ce que je veux commencer avec les processus de vérification? Le Bureau de vérification générale respecte les pratiques exemplaires et les normes professionnelles de la communauté internationale des vérificateurs, notamment en assurant le suivi des vérifications. Le processus de vérification comporte 4 étapes: la planification, l'enquête sur le terrain, la préparation du rapport et finalement le suivi des vérifications. The Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Chair, follows the best practices of the international audit community by including the practice of audit follow-ups. There are 4 phases in every audit, the members of the committee will recall, and they are the planning phase, the fieldwork phase, the reporting phase, and finally the phase that we're here to discuss today, the follow-up. Remembering, of course, that the audit work plan is approved by a committee and council. The Office of the Auditor General here at the City conducts follow-ups on all audits, and we do so about 2 to 3 years after an audit report is completed. The follow-up phase ensures that the promises that management made in response to the recommendations from the audit report ensures that the promises made by management and approved by council have been implemented. Slide 6. There we go. The purpose of audits, of course, are to improve management practices, enhance operational efficiency, identify possible economies. Basically, Council asks us to ensure that management is doing what they've been asked to do with due regard to efficiency and economy. Well, the follow-up identifies management's progress on the implementation of these recommendations. This report itself is not intended to provide an assessment of each individual audit and each individual recommendation. Rather, it presents our overall evaluation of progress made to date across all completed audits. Should Council wish to have a more detailed discussion of specific follow-ups, our staff are certainly available to do so. The original audits, I should point out, upon which these follow-ups are based, are available on the website. This report covers 10 audits, and they're listed there, Mr. Chair, and they fall primarily out of the 2011 audit work plan. I won't list them off, they're shown there. On commence avec les résultats. La direction prend très au sérieux le processus de vérification. Elle a résolu les problèmes soulevés lors de la vérification et amélioré les pratiques de gestion qui s'y rattachent. It's clear that management is committed to the audit process. Management has addressed the issues raised by the audits to improve their practices. However, we would really like to draw attention to one audit where progress and recommendations has not been up to the same level as others in this report. As you can see from this chart, about 84% of the audits were 50 to 100% complete at the time of our follow-up. And what we've done is we've categorized each of the audit follow-ups based upon the following criteria. We refer to an audit as making solid progress if 50% or more of the recommendations are evaluated at 75 to 100% complete. Little or no progress category refers to audits where 50% or more of the recommendations are evaluated at being in the 0 to 49% complete. And finally, gradual process for any others. So as you can see from slide 10, 8 of the 10 audits fell into the solid progress category. The next slide, 11, indicates that we found one audit with little or no progress, and that was the audit of the Human Resources Master Plan, and we'll talk about that in a minute, Mr. Chair. And finally, there was one audit where we saw gradual progress, and that was the audit of the OC Transport Communication of canceled bus trips. 13. Le Bureau de vérification générale souhaite attirer l'attention sur une vérification en particulier où le degré d'achèvement de la mise en œuvre des recommandations n'attiennent pas celui des autres. En réponse à la vérification du plan directeur des ressources humaines, moins de la moitié des recommandations ont été entièrement ou en grande partie mises en œuvre. L'échéance pour la mise en œuvre des recommandations devait initialement être 2014, puis a été reportée à 2018. We'd like to draw your attention to one audit where progress on recommendations has not been to the same level as the others in this report. We found in the audit of Human Resources Master Plan that just under half of the recommendations were considered complete or substantially complete. The timeline for addressing the outstanding recommendations was originally identified as 2014, and it's been revised to 2014. Been revised to 2018. Human Resources, in our opinion, should continue to implement these recommendations, but we would like them to consider the benefits of an earlier than their revised implementation date. The two delayed improvements were related to improvements to Human Resources Department workforce planning practices and processes. In our opinion, that's an important activity at the City of Ottawa, given the large dependence on human resources for municipal program delivery. En conclusion, Monsieur le Président, le Bureau de vérificateur général d'Ottawa suivait des pratiques exemplaires. Nous pensons que les suivis sont un élément important du processus de vérification. We believe that, in conclusion, we believe that the follow-ups are best practice, and that's why we follow it here at the City of Ottawa. We see the follow-ups as an important part of the audit process, and that's where management completes their commitment to implementing the council-approved recommendations. We found that most of them were well on their way into implementation, but as we pointed out, the implementation of human resource planning and process efficiencies was a bit delayed. With these follow-up audits now complete, no further work to review the implementation of these recommendations is intended by the office, with the exception of occupational health and safety, which will be included in two aspects. We'll return for an additional follow-up, but we also include a component of occupational health and safety in all of our audits where it's relevant in the future, and we'll continue to do that for the next little while until we feel that we've given Council a reasonable indication of how occupational health and safety is being followed throughout the city. Nevertheless, with the annual work planning process, council requests or reports through the hotline, we could return to these areas for an audit at any point in the future. Mes collègues et moi-même souhaitons remercier le directeur municipal et la direction et le personnel pour leur collaboration et leur aide constante pendant le processus de verification. We'd certainly like to express the continued support that we get from both the city manager and the staff as we go through our audit process. Thank you, and merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. And welcome to the city, to your new colleagues. Councillor Cloutier, I believe you have a technical motion to do first, and then we'll get into questions.
Thank you, Chair. Auditor General Hughes, it's good to see you. Welcome back. A motion, whereas the supporting documentation titled Report on Audit Follow-Ups and Detailed Audit Follow-Ups Report tabled at the Audit Committee October 8th, 2015 was not circulated with the agenda package. Therefore, be it resolved that the Audit Committee approve the addition of these documents for consideration by the committee at today's meeting pursuant to Section 89.3 of the Procedures Bylaw, Bylaw 2014-441.
Thank you. Vice Chair, did you want to ask your question now, too?
Carried?
Oh, sorry, yeah, we carried.
Carried?
Councillor DeRouche, you okay with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, so yeah, if you want to go into your question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hughes, so am I to understand that all the audits undertaken by your office in the work plan for 2011 have been followed up on?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. It is a practice here at the city to follow up all of the audits, and we follow up every recommendation in every audit that is taking place.
And further to your comment just at the end, am I to understand that unless there's a motion or a request, you in the general course of, and your office and your colleagues, there would be no further follow-ups on these items unless a new direction from council would be forthcoming?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. If there was any audit that we have submitted a follow-up on that committee or council wished us to return to continue to monitor, we would do so.
Okay. Can you or one of your colleagues explain to me how we evaluate management's compliance? I see on page 3 of your report substantially complete 75% of the audit recommendations, 22 plus 53. When I calculate in the report management's assessment of their level of completion, I come up with that they've completed, 100% completed, 85 of those 117 recommendations, and substantially completed 13. So for a total of 98 out of the 117. Can you tell me how, or can Madam Jones tell me how that assessment is made, whether something is complete, partially complete?
The way the process works, Mr. Chair, is when we are going to be scheduling our follow-up work, we ask management their indication of where they see themselves as towards the as regards the implementation of the recommendations. And it's we reduce it to numbers. There's really no other way to do it. In most cases where there is agreement between the Office of the Auditor General and city staff, especially when something is completely complete. When there are some recommendations where all of the work has been done, but for example they haven't yet reported back to council, is that considered 100% complete? Well, in our view, we may not see that as 100% complete, and we may see that as, say, 80% complete. At the end of the day, whether something is 75, 80, or 85% complete, the actual number itself is less important. What is important is that there is progress towards implementation. And when, Mr. Chair, when management submitted their comments with the original audit report, where they agreed with the recommendations and provided an implementation date, once council has approved those recommendations, it is a virtual contract between staff and council to complete that project, and between the Office of the Auditor General and council to go in afterwards and verify their progress towards completing the response to the recommendation. So it's the numbers themselves are less important as the fact that there is progress towards the implementation.
Thank you. I agree. The numbers don't always tell the whole story, but and the trends do. As I look at, as you brought up, the audit of the Human Resources Master Plan, you report on page 35 of your report little progress, what you've qualified as little or no progress, but what management on page 36 qualifies as something that is well underway. Only 2 items needing where action has been initiated, the other items being complete. So I guess my question, and maybe it's for Mrs. Jones, on some of the items, and I'm looking at, if I look at recommendation 8 from the audit plan from 2011, the Office of the Auditor General is saying no action, little or no action, and the department, the city, is saying completed. Can you comment on that?
I'm going to ask Marianne Phillips, who's our acting director of HR, to comment on that.
Thank you. Correct. As of January 2014, there were 2 of the recommendations that were complete. But since then, as of September 2015, 7 recommendations were 100% complete.
2, 4, 6, 7. But that's the report that we have, that 7 of the recommendations are substantially complete, but the Office of the Auditor General is suggesting on page 35 that only 2 of the recommendations are complete.
As at January 2014, 2 of the recommendations were complete. That was recommendation 4 and 5. Since that follow-up audit in 2013, we had made substantial progress, and since then, as of September 2015, 7 recommendations are complete.
Mr. Chair, if I could, it's a bit of a time. Some of it is a timing difference, but there are, and I would agree with staff that there is work that goes on after we do our follow-up. But I think there are a couple of recommendations where there is, in our view, more work that that should be done, and we're suggesting that when they had initially indicated they would be completed by 2014, advancing it to 2018, we saw as problematic.
Okay. And like you said, I would just like to see progress on this. As we look at the recommendations that, according to the Auditor General's Office, recommendations 2, 3, and 8, they all have the words, and I'm looking back at the audit of the work plan of 2011, the word workforce planning, planning needs analysis, and workforce planning analysis. All those words are in those recommendations. And as my colleagues on council and I are looking for every $1,000 slice we can in the upcoming budget deliberations, it seems to me, as Auditor General Hughes said, that the salaries, we're in a service business, salaries taking up such a large amount of it's a big expense, that is where we should focus on ensuring that we are as efficient, as effective in our planning analysis as possible. And I don't want to spend money on the Auditor General's Office to make recommendations that are not implemented as fully as possible, so that our employees are as productive as possible, and that we use the taxpayers' dollars as efficiently as possible. So Chair?
If I may, let me interject. Maybe a solution to this would be for Ms. Phillips to meet with the Auditor General and yourself and myself, and we'll take a look at these recommendations that are worked on since then, and we can come back to committee and suggest whether further follow-up needs to be done, because they are very important. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll schedule something between now and the next meeting. Okay?
I agree, Chair, and that's in the spirit of the Auditor General will not be doing more work on this, so it's up to us.
Okay, and further to the Chair and what the Auditor General said, we have completed 7 of the 9 recommendations and recognized January 2014, we had only completed 2. We've done significant work. We also recognize the concerns of the Auditor General in terms of the timelines to complete the remaining work in terms of 2018, and I certainly have had a discussion with the City Manager. He indicated his support to bring this back to Senior Management Committee to see what we can do to expedite that to even a sooner date, recognizing the challenges we're dealing with.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cloutier. Councillor DeRouche, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. And I'm glad to see you back, Ken, and I hope you feel better. So we're not going to be very hard on you today.
Much appreciated, Mr. Chair.
My question is going to be around the hedging, Chair. I just want to echo what my colleague said about we do audit, and it costs us lots of money, and we always look about saving and potential saving. In 2011 auditor report, if I read it right, the area of potential saving is to discontinue hedging, and that's going to give us almost saving approximately $2 million, and yet we keep doing hedging. And I just want to see what's the rationale behind it. And I understand at that time Public Works disagree with it, but I mean, from the numbers that we're seeing, we are losing money year after year. My other question is, we did report the losses, we did report the saving, but we never reported the losses. I mean, City Council probably, they want to hear what they're saving and where they're losing.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. The staff have reported the savings that come from hedging. They have not been as diligent in the past of recording the losses from hedging, and we're suggesting that they should be equally forthcoming with the reporting on the losses from hedging.
And why are you still doing hedging?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, we had stopped hedging at that point. We were hedging when we were part of the co-op that was purchasing natural gas, and since that time, and we were hedged over 50%, closer to 70%. And over that time, since 2012, 2013, we've been reducing those hedges, and now we're down to 40% hedged only into 2016 and 17. So we've been purchasing at market since then, and last year was the first year where we actually beat the market by $300,000.
Thank you. That's good news. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor DeRouche. And for those that don't know who you were, did you want to introduce yourself? Sorry, this is our Deputy Treasurer. Yes, thank you. If I may, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on the specifics and then overall on your report. On the procurement one, so page 23 of your report on how we're procuring trucks and cars and so on, I thank you for your work on that, and I find it troubling that we're not doing an analysis of what the requests are that are coming in for vehicles. Is that one of the, maybe Ms. Jones wants to answer this, is what are we, from a management perspective, doing on this? Because as you know, as part of the budget deliberations, we are now talking about a car and truck diet here at the city, so this could really go a long way to help that.
General Manager Wiley will speak to that.
To the Chair, you are correct, and as part of the holiday we're taking on our replacements fund, we will be doing a comprehensive study on how we procure vehicles in the city with an eye to save more money in the future.
So you will actually come up with a plan and come, are we going to hear back about this at Council or FEDCO or somewhere on what the steps are going to be taken to evaluate whether in fact the person needs the vehicle being requested?
Yes, Chair, we will.
And the specific vehicles as well, like, you know, truck versus car, that kind of, we're going to go right into this, are we?
That's correct, Chair.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Wiley. That's good news. As a taxpayer, that's great news. The other question I had, Mr. Hughes, for you is, I noticed in these recommendations, I recall when we decided as this term of council that we would do this type of reporting to follow up on the recommendations in previous audits, just to make sure that we are getting the full benefit out of all the work that your office does. And I notice a lot of your staff are here today, and I appreciate all their efforts. One of the things I didn't see here in the follow-ups is any follow-up on the dollar values that used to be attached to audits, the potential savings in that. So I just wonder if you could help us with an idea on how we can go about doing that in the future, like to identify the potential savings that are there and how can we quantify them and perhaps provide a context for those numbers.
Mr. Chair, in some audits, auditors can identify areas where savings can be realized, and in some audits you can quantify those. The actual processes and practices that would be put in place to realize those savings would obviously have to be developed by management. It is their responsibility to deliver a program, and therefore it would not be fair for us to prescribe a particular process on them, and more importantly, it would impair our independence. And one of the things that we have to do as auditors is be independent of the processes that we review. So the first piece that we've got to identify is that we will identify savings, that we will quantify savings, and if we're going to quantify savings and then have a follow-up on those savings, and currently there is, when we do our follow-ups, we ensure that management has kept the agreement with council that they made when they responded to the recommendations. We do not review the savings that were identified in the report. We don't follow up with management to ensure that those savings were realized. Management has the ability to either direct those savings elsewhere or elsewhere within their organization or to deliver them elsewhere across the city. And that's why at this point and up until now, our follow-ups have not included a review of the savings.
Can we ask then, Mr. Hughes, that you meet with the city manager or the deputies to explore if there's any opportunity to do this going forward, and that we can come to some sort of an agreement how we could do it? Because when we look at these recommendations, you know, if there's 6 recommendations and only 2 haven't been done, but if one of those are the ones that were supposed to generate all the savings out of that recommendation, I think it's very important to us to know or have a sense of whether we're achieving any of the savings. And I realize we're asking a lot, but could we possibly ask for you to meet with the city manager's office to try and explore that for us, and then come back to the committee at a future meeting and let us know the possibilities?
Mr. Chair, we would take that as direction and meet with the city manager to work out a process that would work for both the Office of the Auditor General and city staff on a process to track and harvest savings.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
And further to that, I did have a discussion as well with the city manager on this, and he made the commitment that we would undertake to do further work and report back.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now for the one piece that's not in this audit follow-up report that I'm sure most residents are looking for an update on. I'd like to find out where we're at with the Orga World audit recommendations. I believe Mr. O'Connor, you're back there. Could you maybe give us an update on where we're at?
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the operational issues. If committee is interested, I can give you an update on the legal side of things, because as members have been apprised from time to time, there is ongoing litigation between the City of Ottawa and Orga World. So I can do a summary of that if you'd like to hear that.
Please, yeah, and then maybe Ms. Jones for the operational side, or?
I'm going to look to our solicitor in terms of what I am able to talk to.
What I'm trying to get at, Mr. O'Connor, is, of course, we want to get the legal update where you're at with the good work you're doing on that file. But also, in the last audit committee meeting when that audit was tabled, there was a lengthy discussion on opportunities to improve this contract to benefit the taxpayers of Ottawa. I'm just curious, we haven't heard anything on it. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, again, I'll start with the legal, and we'll go to Ms. Jones for the broader question. As members of the committee probably recollect, in hindsight, the Orga World contract went through the arbitration process. The city was successful. The Orga World, the company, filed 2 court hearings as a result of that in July of 2014. They filed an appeal, and effectively the appeal was to say that the arbitrator's decision was wrong in law and they should actually overturn it and give them the appropriate favorable decision. And then they also filed an application. The appeal was heard this past January, as I think most members know, and the city was successful again. There was a clause in the agreement between the parties that said the decision by the arbitrator will be final and binding, and the Superior Court of Justice said that means no appeal. Orga World then took that loss and went off to the Court of Appeal and argued it again. And in June of this past year, we were successful again, where the Court of Appeal said, no, there is no more appeal of this. This was an arbitration decision. So that ended that stream of the litigation process. We continue on with the application, and the application is an allegation by Orga World that the arbitration process itself was flawed for a number of procedural reasons, and that the matter should be sent back by the courts to another arbitrator for another round of arbitration. Obviously, the city is opposing this. There have been a number of interim little procedural matters before the courts on this one, Mr. Chair, and right now it is scheduled in its finality to be heard in the appeals of some of those interrogatories, as we call them, is to be heard in December of this year, and the major part of that application is going to be heard probably closer to Q2 of 2016. So we're looking at ongoing litigation with Orga World.
So So the ongoing litigation with it, in the meantime, where are we on the operational side with the actual renegotiating the contract, or is that not moving forward while the legal issues are being dealt with? Because that tells me that the taxpayers are paying too much for a contract that in the audit, it was clearly identified that the company did not have the capacity to deliver what they were billing us for. So are you telling me that we're still paying for that, shall we call it imaginary capacity?
Again, Mr. Chair, I don't want to infringe on the operational staff's answering of those questions. What I can tell you is we have raised the capacity issue with Orga World, and we are going through the contract process for that as well in the arbitration process. So that is another aspect of it.
In that arbitration process, is the taxpayer protected in that there could be some retroactive awards here?
I'm not certain about the retroactivity, Mr. Chair, and I can certainly go back and check on that, but I can give you a more detailed update probably in November.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add?
I don't think I can add any further to what our solicitor said, but if you've got questions, we do have Marilyn Juneau here.
Okay.
But being mindful that we are in litigation, and I'm not sure if we can add further.
Understood, but there is, we also have to appreciate that taxpayers want to know what's going on with this, because it was a very good audit that was delivered. I think everybody accepted the findings of the audit, and you know, while it's still in litigation, it could stay in litigation forever. We still have to try to move forward here and get a better deal. Councillor Cloutier?
Just thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, Mr. O'Connor. Is the issue of the capacity of the plant, but is another part of the litigation the admissibility of yard waste? Is that the...
Sorry, the admissibility of?
Yard waste and as part of the Orga World of what they have to take?
Overall, that's my understanding, but that was already addressed in the first arbitration as well, that leaf and yard waste was definitely part and parcel of the package.
But that's what they're appealing?
That is, they're appealing, ironically enough, they are saying there were some unfair procedural matters that took place during the original arbitration. That's what they're going to court now under their application process.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Connor and Vice Chair. So if no other questions, then will we accept the report? Received?
Yes.
Received? Thank you. Yes. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, we have another motion now following.
Thank you, Chair. Quick motion. Whereas on December 3rd, 2014, City Council approved the 2014-2018 Council Governance Review Report, which included that both the terms of reference for the Transit Commission and the reporting protocols for the Auditor General be revised such that audits related to OC Transpo operational matters would be referred to the Transit Commission for consideration of the Transit Commission as part of standard practice. Therefore, be it resolved that the Audit Committee refer the following audit follow-ups to the Transit Commission, as the matters referenced in these follow-ups fall within the Transit Commission's delegated authority, and those audits are the audit of OC Transpo, communication of cancelled bus trips, and audit of OC Transpo scheduling process for bus operators.
Carried? Thank you. So, any in-camera items? No. Notices of motions for subsequent meetings? We're good. The next meeting will be November 26th. I believe the Auditor General is prepared to table his report, his annual report at that meeting, and we'll also deal with the 2016 work plan, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. You're good. Any inquiries? We're great. Other business? Seeing none. Motion to adjourn. Thank you all. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and good to see you back.